Hey, greetings, everyone. It's Naomi Wolf broadcasting from London, from an undisclosed location in London. Just kidding, sort of. Brian doesn't like me to share exactly where I am. You can see him in the background. Substack Live says it's fine for us to be informal. So, welcome to our slightly messy hotel room in a neighborhood in London that I really love. It's a longer conversation, which I'll share with you in my next essay and my next broadcast about the decline of Europe and Britain, and the kind of collapse of the cultures here. I mean, I only know about this visit to parts of the UK. We were in Sussex and Rye, not in that order, Rye and Sussex, beautiful physically. And London, deeply, deeply changed. So you can still find England in kind of corners of the countryside, but it's a massive transformation. This country's being completely, sorry to say it, emasculated. And I will say more about that in my next broadcast. But for this broadcast, I'm going to be reading to you about a stopover on the journey when I went from California to change planes in Minnesota and ended up in Boston. And this is what I found. This essay is about, darling, just so you know, you're totally in the shot, but that's fine with me if it's fine with you.
Lucky them.
Lucky them. This essay is about the nature of cultures that we are bringing to the West. And I mean, you'll see what the essence of it is, but basically it's my argument as an anti-racist person, which is how I like to commit myself, my identity, my intentions. It's my explanation about why we have to stop talking about the importation of some really horrible cultural expectations and norms to the United States. It's not racist to object to these, and I will tell you exactly what I mean. So this, again, is called A Stopover in the Heartland. Is it okay to love the America of no cliterodectomies, no fatwas? I left my California idyll and soared into milky, hazy U.S. skies. I touched down to change planes in Minneapolis, which I recalled as having been the corn-fed, friendly Midwest. I saw that now almost everyone employed by the airlines, as well as everyone working as ground crew, was of Somali descent or were recent arrivals from Somalia. They spoke Arabic or Somali to one another, not even bothering with English. Passengers and colleagues alike were greeted with a hand to the heart. The flight attendants for Delta out of Minneapolis wore chic little gray attenuated hijabs pinned to their hair. They also happened to be in furious moods. I have no problem with reasonable legal immigration. I have no problem with other religions. But I did wonder what had happened to all of the US-born former staffers that used to be employed in these fairly well-paying jobs. It was not diversity I was seeing now, but a new form of hegemony, meaning everyone alike. I wondered what kind of security issue it might represent when an entire major US travel hub was now under the management of a single recently arrived nationality, one that is not our own. The fact that the entire sensitive Minneapolis-St. Paul airport infrastructure, which I was surprised to learn is a joint civil and US military facility, is in the hands of Somalis, is an example to me of the chaos and vulnerability we import when we in the West lift humans wholesale out of their sometimes dangerous, sometimes abusive contexts and resituate them in influential Western contexts with almost no acculturation or assimilation metrics. Quote, the immigrant is positioned always in liberal discourse. It's so bright, I need to shift my position here. The immigrant is positioned always in liberal discourse as in need of our help. The narrative is always about our responsibilities to such immigrants, and all of the immigrants are always positioned within this narrative as being A, helpless, and B, innocent, and C, the immigrant's culture that is being imported along with the immigrant is always supposed to enhance the United States culture simply because it is other from the nasty, racist, homogenous culture of the United States. In fact, this narrative actually, to me, itself seems to be quite racist, simply a new NGO reframed revamp of the condescending 18th century European trope of the non-European innocent, admirable, noble savage. This narrative indeed reveals, in my view, a profound ignorance about the actual world, a lack of awareness of the kinds of struggles that peace-loving, justice-loving, freedom-loving people living in failed states and under oppressive regimes actually face. Some societies are, in fact, neither helpless nor innocent. At the level of leadership and of social contracts, and especially of the treatment of women and girls, Somalia, to take just one example, is a horrible, culpable society. Individual Somalis, no doubt, are likely to be people of great decency. But look at Somali norms and society as a whole, which we are also importing when we resettle people en masse. According to Amnesty International, all parties in that nation's current civilian conflict, a confrontation between the government and a militia group named Al-Shabaab, abuse their own civilians and deprive their own people of human rights. In other words, no Somali party is innocent. The crisis in Somalia is not currently derived from those cliches of racialized identities, quote, white against black, or quote, colonizer versus colonized. It is rather a crisis of Somali against Somali, and very specifically, it is a crisis of Somali men against Somali women and girls. There are 500,000 internally displaced Somali people, 80% of them women and children, who are suffering horrific abuses, including sexual assault, forced marriages, and, quote, gender-based violence, meaning beatings and female genital mutilation at the hands of Somalis. According to the European Union Agency for Asylum, female genital mutilation affects almost the entire female population of Somalia. And there's a graph that I show in the Substack that shows you that virtually every Somali woman has been subjected to this appalling practice. I'm going to now present my screen, and I'm going to share a screen, and I'm going to show you this, and you can see the graph right there. Okay, and it shows like 98, 99%. You see that? It's shocking. The chart above explains FGMC Research Institute shows a dip in the ages 15 to 19 simply because girls that age may not have been cut yet, quote unquote. In 2018, 3 young girls, 2 of them sisters, died within a single week in Somalia from complications arising from female genital mutilation. A 13-year-old girl died of female genital mutilation in Somalia in 2021, and The Guardian reported a rise in the practice during the pandemic. Yet, points out Amnesty International, the federal Somali parliament failed to pass bills on sexual offenses and female genital mutilation, meaning it is still legal. It is not illegal to do this in Somalia. And that top of that image there, I know these are very hard to look at, is a little girl being held down while her genitals are about to be incised by this object. I don't know if you can see that really clearly. I'll try to make it larger. It is like a serrated razor that is just a razor used to well, I'll describe it in a minute. According to the FGMC Research Initiative, which centers on studying the issue of female genital mutilation, and I will stop presenting for a minute there. A staggering 99.2% of girls and women in Somalia aged 15 to 49 have endured female genital mutilation. The average ages when Somali girls are cut, quote unquote, is from 10 to 14 years of age. Even though worldwide, many Muslim feminists and even progressive imams are speaking out against the practice and pointing out that female genital mutilation is not, in fact, demanded by Islam, 72% of Somali girls and women believe that this mutilation is a requirement of their religion. The Somali community has the highest percentage of genitally mutilated women in the world. There are 61,000 Somali people in the state of Minnesota alone, and many sources confirm that Somali girls and women continue to suffer genital mutilation while in the United States. In other words, Somali immigrants in Minnesota have not stopped this abuse of their girls and women just because they are now also Minnesotans. A scholarly article asserts that between 150,000 and 200,000 American African girls are still at risk of undergoing genital mutilation. Quote, "Hey everyone, it's Naomi Wolf of Daily Clout. Have you ever wondered why your brain can feel foggy even when you're eating clean and exercising? It might not be burnout, it could be parasites. Groundbreaking research from Dr. Alan McDonald reveals a direct link between chronic parasite infections and neurological diseases, such as multiple sclerosis. Parasites can cause inflammation, nerve damage, and long-term cognitive decline. More reason to do a full body cleanse at least once a year. The wellness company has a solution for you, ivermectin and mebendazole, the gold standard parasite solution now combined in one cleanse combo, designed to eliminate harmful invaders and support your immune system naturally. Medical grade, not some trendy herbal gimmick. Fill out a quick intake form and you'll get a 3-month supply shipped straight to your door. Maha is officially here, and the wellness company is making hard to get medications digitally accessible so you can live your best life. Head to dailyclout.health and use code dailyclout to save $60 off plus free shipping on all orders. Cleanse your body today. Get rid of parasites today. Thank you. Sanctuary for Families indicates that Somali and other African families import traditional practitioners from overseas into the United States to circumcise their daughters. And in some cases, they send their daughters abroad for circumcision. And of course, circumcision is a euphemism, right? The practice of sending their daughters abroad has become known as, quote, vacation cutting, end quote, end quote. So these communities' arrival physically in America did not magically heal this cultural corruption. This culture of mutilation has not, in fact, vanished. This nation did not magically wash this cruelty away. Somali, quote, female circumcision, end quote, is different from other forms. It is by far the most severe. Somali FGM, female genital mutilation, is type 3 genital mutilation, which means the excision of the entire outer part of girls' genitalia and the stitching together of the raw wound that is left behind. Somali FGM involves, quote, the complete removal of the clitoris and labia minora together with the inner surface of the labia majora. And 3 different scholarly studies are cited there. Now I'm going to share my screen again, and let me just warn you before I do, it's going to be a very, very, very upsetting image. So here you can see type 1, female genital mutilation, type 2, female genital mutilation, type 2 down here as well. This is type 3, and this is type 3. And in the images above, the green areas represent the tissue that is excised in each form of female genital mutilation. I'm showing this again. So here it would be the clitoris excised. Here is the clitoris and the labia minora. Some of the labia minora here is the clitoris and all the labia minora. But in Somali female genital mutilation, that is not cruel and extreme enough. The entire inside of the labia majora, which are these parts of the anatomy, and the labia minora and the clitoris are all cut away, leaving a horrible wound, which is then sutured into the flesh. And this is not like, generally speaking, overwhelmingly speaking, I would say, in a sterile surgical environment with anesthetic. This is like girls being held down in their villages with non-sterile instruments. In the image above, and let me stop sharing now. In the image above, the green areas represent the tissue that is excised in each form of female genital mutilation. The Somali versions are the two images in the last row. Women and girls subjected to this kind of mutilation suffer chronic bleeding, horrific pain during intercourse, problems in childbirth, infections, and dramatically increased mortality. Quote, this increased mortality rate translates into an estimated 44,320 excess deaths per year across countries where FGM, female genital mutilation, is practiced. These estimates imply that FGM is a leading cause of the death of girls and young women in those countries where it is practiced, accounting for more deaths than any other cause other than enteric infections, respiratory infections, or malaria, which in those parts of the world are the big killers, right? They have different illnesses killing people in Somalia and in that part of the world than in the West. The big killers, of course, here are, cancer, heart disease, stroke, but female genital mutilation is right up there in the top 4 reasons girls and women die in Somalia. I really want you to process that, understand it, and think about it. Somalis now represent over 1% of the Minnesota population. This organized, politicized community, of course, can now swing elections. Why should we think that, since this horrific practice endures even now in the US, a 10% makeup of Somalis in Minnesota won't alter American culture in the direction of this kind of misogyny, a form of misogyny that Somali women themselves are seeking to combat? For that matter, why should we assume that a mass influx of immigrants from closed societies will champion open societies? There is no freedom of expression in Somalia, for example. Journalists are being killed, arrested, and detained there. The head of a media group, Ali Nur Salad, pardon me, was arrested when he posted on social media that the drug khat was being used by al-Shabaab members. Salad was denied legal representation. He faces charges, quote, including, quote, offending the honor or prestige of the head of state, committing obscene acts, distributing obscene publications and performances, insult, and criminal defamation, as well as restrictions on travel and on speaking to the media, end quote. The government of Somalia raids live television debates. Quote, on 6th January, Somaliland intelligence officers raided the offices of Somali TV in Hargeisa, the Somaliland capital, interrupting a live debate about Ethiopia, Somaliland. They arrested the Somali TV chair, Mohammed Abdi Sheikh, also known as Ilig, Ilyas Abdi Nasser, a technician, and Mohammed Abdi Abdullahi, a reporter, end quote. The International Federation of Journalists condemned the arrests. And I will now show you Somali journalist Mohammed Abdi Sheikh and the 2 other reporters who were arrested with him. I will share my screen. And you can see them there. That that failed state, that society without the rule of law or protections for free expression, that society that sees fit to gouge little girls between the legs with razors, to excise their clitorises, and to injure them permanently, those bad norms, as opposed to, quote, bad individuals or a, quote, bad group of people, let alone a, quote, bad ethnicity, are what we should object to importing wholesale, in this case, to run the management of our key airport hub in the sensitive center of our nation. And I'm going to stop sharing now. Reporters in Somalia, women in Somalia, refugees in Somalia, even parliamentarians in Somalia. Quote, on 2nd December, Somaliland police arrested Mohammed Abib, an outspoken opposition MP, and detained him in Mandera prison, live in a state of fear. Amnesty International and other human rights organizations call Somalia a, quote, failed state, end quote. It is okay for us here in the West not to want to live in the state of fear that many Somalis, Afghanis, rural Pakistanis, and much of civil society, as well as journalists in Mexico and anti-trafficking activists in Colombia, suffer. Voice of America, in an article about Somali, quote, political victories in the West, end quote, reports that Somalis in Minnesota have become well organized politically. Quote, Abdirahman Sharif, the imam and the leader of the Dar al-Hijra Mosque in Minneapolis, says another reason Somalis have risen in U.S. politics is because they are a tight-knit community. Quote, and this is the leader speaking. When Somalis came to the US, they moved to a foreign country where they could not communicate with people. So for them, being close to people from their country meant having someone to communicate with, and that helped them to unite their votes and resources for political aspirants, end quote, Sharif said, end quote. Imam Sharif says nothing, this is me now, about Somalis wanting to learn to communicate with their American neighbors, or about their wishing to help America to succeed, or wishing to contribute to the shared destiny of all Americans. In this article, at least, the Somali political voice is a separatist one. The article describes Somali electeds gaining high office also in Britain and Canada and Finland, Norway, and Sweden. Other Somali leaders stress with pride the separateness of the community. A Swedish Somali leader similarly does not mention wishing to contribute to Sweden, which welcomed the community, or wishing to assimilate into Swedish society successfully. Rather, he too is proud of the separateness of the community. Quote, Mohammed Gur, a former member of the council of the city of Borlänge, Sweden, said there are unique things that keep Somalis together and make them successful in the politics in Europe. Quote, and this is the leader speaking, the fabric of Somalis is unique compared to the other diaspora communities. They share the same ethnicity, color, language, and religion. There are many things that keep them together that divide them back home. So their togetherness is one reason I can attribute to their successes, end quote, Gore said, end quote. By the way, I just want to jump in here to say two things. One is that as I was reading this, I was realizing that if your housing is paid for, your education is paid for, your medical care is paid for, your food is paid for, you have a lot more time to organize politically and run for office. If you're like me and you're getting to that age at which your body sometimes just hurts all the time, please listen. Don't reach for another painkiller until you learn about this turmeric hack for pain and inflammation. You've probably already heard that turmeric is being used to fight inflammation and joint pain, but not all turmeric is created equal. Regular turmeric powder in your pantry will help you a little, but a leading pain doctor from Connecticut discovered a special turmeric extract that is 200 times more powerful than what you find in standard turmeric. And when he shared this turmeric secret with his patients, the results were extraordinary. This turmeric extract attacks pain at the source, turning it off like a light switch so that pain not only often goes away, but stays away. Dr. Josh, the brains behind it all, has spent 20 years helping hundreds of thousands of Americans finally break free from constant aches and stiffness, and his turmeric hack has been the backbone of their success. So don't engage, if you can avoid it, with expensive surgeries, pain injections, or inefficient over-the-counter medications with side effects. Greet pain-free living. It's incredible stuff. I started taking it regularly, and I really did notice a difference. Again, you can't just take any old turmeric. If you want to learn more about Dr. Josh's turmeric secret and the exact method for how to use it in your routine, go to goldenrevive.com/daily cloud. The link is right below this video in the description. Click on it and start your journey toward a pain-free, healthier life. You do. And you, like, as opposed to native born Americans or British people or French people who are scrambling to pay their bills because all that stuff isn't paid for, unlike the way it's paid for in the United States and in Britain and Europe, in many countries. So that's really interesting. Like, why cover all the expenses of immigrants and not the expenses of native born citizens, unless you really have a policy that encourages and allows immigrants to organize, sign people up, lobby, run for office, have meetings. It's fascinating. And by the same token, making sure that people can't pay their bills is a great way to make sure that they're too tired and worn out and depressed and busy to run for office. Somalia is just one example. And the other thing I want to say before I go on is, let's think about that word diaspora. This leader in Sweden referred to the diaspora community. Well, in the US, understandably, many African-American activists refer to the African diaspora because Africans, 300 and 400 years ago, 200 years ago, were captured in Africa and against their will, sent all over the New World to have their labor exploited as enslaved people. But the immigrants to Sweden are not a diaspora. A diaspora is people being ejected from their true home, right? So by using the word diaspora, Gore is basically saying that the Somalis in Sweden aren't Swedes. They are Somalis, and they are in a state of diaspora from their true home, which is Somalia, not Sweden. That is very different, a very different consciousness than, my grandparents or a lot of, immigrants who come to America or to Britain for the right reason. They want to become American or British, or, Israeli or French or wherever else they're immigrating to. So really think about that. When you're in diaspora, you don't have a primary allegiance to the country in which you are in a state of diaspora. Picking up again, Somalia is just one example of a separatist immigrant society with viciously misogynist practices. But across Europe and in Britain, other viciously misogynist societies' norms are being imported wholesale, along with mass separatist immigration. British and European and Irish women have started to protest against the harassment, intimidation, and sexual violence directed against them by immigrant men from various countries that treat women and girls badly. These attacks are being minimized by the courts in these, quote, advanced nations. That's really true here in Britain right now. In Britain, a British mother of a 12-year-old girl, Lucy Connolly, who had recently lost her young son, is in jail for 31 months for a tweet she posted in the wake of the murder of 3 little British girls at their dance practice by an immigrant. Connolly called for immigrant housing to be burnt down, quote, for all I care, end quote, and for immigrants to be deported. And she actually deleted the post and thought better of it, but it didn't matter. She was in trouble anyway, and I will show you what those little girls look like. Those are the little girls who were murdered in a Taylor Swift dance performance, dance practice in Britain, little British girls murdered by an immigrant. And their names are Elsie Dot Stancombe, Alice Aguiar and B.B. King. And this took place in July of 2024. You can see those little girls. Meanwhile, in March of 2025, a pregnant Scotswoman in Glasgow was raped by a Muslim Deliveroo driver, Mohammed Khan, so violently that he caused her to miscarry. That rapist received a 12-month sentence, so literally less, dramatically less, than Lucy Connolly received. She got 31 months for a tweet. She got almost 3 times the amount of time in prison as a rapist who caused a Scotswoman to miscarry by the violence of the rape. I have avoided engaging in this issue to date because I know, sadly, that it is not only migrant men who rape European, British, and US women. Many European, British, and American men rape women routinely as well. So I was reluctant to accept that something new was happening, but by now, the way in which British, Irish, European, and US women describe new levels of street harassment and of sexual violence and new levels of impunity for abusers from the courts, in the US, that is, before President Trump was elected, leads me sadly to conclude that this situation is not, quote, rape culture as usual, end quote. Rather, I think we need to face the fact that the globalist push to flood the West with millions of men from brutally misogynist societies and to let them do their worst with sexual and with other kinds of violence to women and girls with near impunity is part of a war on women and girls that is deliberate. And that this form of assault is of a piece with promoting abusive neologisms, meaning new coinages of words, such as, quote, birthing people, end quote. Abusive situations, such as public spectacles of men beating women in boxing rings, the erasure of women's safe spaces, such as restrooms and changing rooms, and in general, the erasure of women and girls as a respected, let alone understood, let alone in some ways even protected category of human beings. We have to stop talking about this issue as if it is one of race or ethnicity or even religion. And we must understand that this issue is profoundly one of social contracts that are utterly different from each other. You are not a, quote, right-wing extremist, end quote, or a, quote, white supremacist to not want in the US or in England or in France or the Netherlands what unfortunate women and children and journalists and MPs suffer and endure and protest and resist in Somalia and in other conflicted, beleaguered lands. The West took millennia of effort and struggle to evolve the rule of law, freedom of expression, the equal rights of women and religious and racial minorities and homosexuals, as I've pointed out elsewhere. You could do the same deep dive into the norms of many of the nations whose entire societies have been imported wholesale to the West: Afghanistan, Yemen, rural Pakistan, parts of Haiti, parts of Central America. It takes at least 2 generations of steady acculturation to absorb the values of stable, civil law-based, egalitarian, open, pluralistic societies. It took at least 2 generations for my relatives to leave behind the instincts of the shtetl, which is an Eastern European ghetto. We in the West have to start to be unafraid to say what rights organizations say routinely: some social contracts are just better than others. Everything is, in fact, not the same. We need to be unafraid to say, quote, you know what? Some things are, in fact, better. It is, in fact, better to have a society with a rule of law. It is better to have a society that does not force women into marriage or tear apart the genitals of young girls or arrest TV debaters in mid-sentence or detain its parliamentarians. We are going to protect our own precious social contract, first by protecting our borders, and second by protecting our futures, our norms, our languages and cultures and histories, and our rule of law, our women and children and the vulnerable. And there is nothing racist, or xenophobic about that commitment, end quote. I made it home to Brian and to Loki, our dog. I should have been at peace. Loki gazed at me adoringly. Some dogs never hold grudges. Brian told me hilarious stories and made me his delicious hot coffee with cream, and we sat on the porch and looked at the high sun in the trees. Still, I was edgy. Coming up to July 4th, 2025, in spite of the leadership from MAGA that often delighted me, we've got a little bit of a disruption from the. Thank you, sweetheart. Coming up to July 4th, 2025, in spite of leadership from MAGA that often delighted me, the American nation still felt so unstable. No one in legacy institutions on the left or in globalist networks seemed to have learned anything from the recent past. That was scary. On the plane from California to Minneapolis and from Minneapolis to Boston, I had been reading memoirs by luminaries on the left. They seemed bizarrely uninformed, working still within cult-like two-dimensional reasoning. The otherwise brilliant novelist Salman Rushdie, in his memoir Knife, Meditations After an Attempted Murder, a book about the Islamist would-be assassin who nearly succeeded in murdering the author on a lecture stage in Chautauqua, New York, describes major voices of his generation, from Paul Auster to Martin Amis, post-2021, developing cancer or other serious illnesses, suddenly becoming mortally ill or dying. Not a flicker of awareness rises off of Rushdie's pages about what could have caused this plague that swept a generation of major novelistic talents into annihilation. Rushdie also describes MAGA voters with contempt. As he travels across states in the US, he sneers at the Trump signs. Rushdie describes giving a speech on, quote, freedom of expression in 2022 for the writers' free speech organization, PEN America, at the United Nations. But Rushdie does not notice that the administration he was championing, the Biden-Harris administration, had damagingly silenced people such as Dr. Jay Bhattacharya of Stanford, Dr. Martin Kulldorff of Harvard, and many others, including me for that matter. He reviles the fanaticism that led to his assailant, a Muslim extremist, taking a knife to a 73-year-old man. But he does not notice that we don't support fatwas or fanatical theocracies here. We don't kowtow to imams or to priests or to rabbis here. He objects to our American, quote, white supremacy, quote, exerting itself over Black and women's bodies. But this is in fact a metaphor. It is not our law. In fact, actually, Black and white women can go from state to state still in America if they wish to secure an abortion, which is what Rushdie is talking about. It is the global South, much deified by the left, that actually, quote, exerts itself, end quote, over Black and women's bodies. It is, in fact, in law, fanatical extremist Muslim societies, among others, that, quote, exert themselves, end quote, over girls' and women's bodies. But somehow Rushdie takes aim at us, racist old America, that eternal whipping boy, from the podium of the UN, instead of at those actually culpable nations. Why would that be? Could it be because it is easier and safer to attack racist old America, where in fact girls and women of every race actually have rights because we in America are unlikely to issue a fatwa against Rushdie? Rushdie, in his UN speech, does not notice that we don't have female genital mutilation as an organic part of our culture, or militias interrupting debates. He gives no credit to the warm shelter of America, which made him a citizen, which created the shelter for him of the First Amendment and received him at a time when major voices in Britain were attacking him for having spoken out inconveniently. He barely credits an America that he describes consistently as treating him and his loved ones with kindness and accepting him and his family with open arms, an America that assigned indeed a U.S. attorney to prosecute his assailant. His right-on contempt for half of the nation is so recognizable to me. It is so tiresome, so ill thought out. Quote, this is Rushdie, "We are engaged in a war of stories, a war between incompatible versions of reality, and we need to learn how to fight it." You have to stay healthy and well at times like this. You know that I often have suffered from mobility issues, and now I don't. Part of my lifestyle is Native Path collagen. So Native Path's collagen formula is made with ingredients that are scientifically developed to increase bone mineral density, support tissue recovery, reduce wrinkles, enhance hair thickness, and strengthen nails. Who wouldn't want more collagen with all of these benefits? So right now, when you visit getnativepath.com/daily clout, you can stock up on Native Path collagen for up to an incredible 45% off today, plus free shipping. Every order comes with a 365-day money-back guarantee. You can try it risk-free today. It is a single ingredient formula with no fillers, additives, or artificial sweeteners, and it's third-party tested for heavy metals, which makes sure that it is pure and safe. It's flavorless. You can add it to anything. I add it to my oatmeal. You can add it to coffee or smoothies. Its formula makes it more bioavailable, meaning it's absorbed more easily and mixes without clumping. And the best part is Native Path is offering amazing bundle deals, 3 or 6 packs at a fraction of the price of other brands. With over 4 million jars sold, 1 million happy customers, 8,000 five-star reviews, and a 365-day no-risk guarantee, Native Path is a trusted choice, and they offer an 800 number. You can ask any question. A real person is waiting to help. You can join a private Facebook community. I love these people. Share recipes, success stories. So that's getnativepath.com/daily clout and start your experience of transformation today. A tyrant has arisen in Russia, and this is Rushdie, and brutality engulfs Ukraine, whose people, led by a satirist turned hero, offer heroic resistance and are already creating a legend of freedom. Meanwhile, this is Rushdie, America is sliding back toward the Middle Ages as white supremacy exerts itself not only over Black bodies, but over women's bodies too. Italics mine. False narratives rooted in antiquated religiosity and bigoted ideas from hundreds of years ago are used to justify this and find willing audiences and believers. And my comment in brackets is, that is you, MAGA, in case you didn't catch it, end brackets. He goes on to complain about his adopted country. Quote, "There was a war to fight on many fronts against the bigoted revisionism that sought to rewrite history, whether in New Delhi or in Florida," and my comment is, you again, MAGA, "against the cynical powers that sought to erase the 2 original sins of the United States, slavery and oppression, and genocide of the country's original inhabitants, against fantasies of an idealized past. When exactly was America great in the way those red hats want to recreate?" End quote. That's Rushdie. At that point, I just wanted to throw the little beige volume across the room. I am tired of this. This rudeness, this churlishness, this taking for granted of our beautiful ethos, our welcome, this slap in the face of Lady Liberty. I am tired of this ungraciousness. Visitors to our nation's universities terrifying our actual students. Global intellectuals welcomed by us, scolding us from the platforms of the biggest fora in the world, deriding half of our electorate as if they know better than half of America about America, when in fact they know nothing about half of America, when they have probably never spoken to, quote, those red hats, quote, in their lives, when in fact they could no doubt learn something from that sneered at half of America. I am tired of this use of the shelter of our lovely First Amendment to do nothing but cavil at us, criticize us, instead of setting to with all the rest of us, actually to make America better, out of love, out of reverence and appreciation. I am tired of such people, such immigrants, legal or illegal, who have so little appreciation for where they actually are and for what it took from American generations past to bestow upon them the, quote, Philadelphia freedom that they now treat so lightly and so dishonorably. It's cool on the intellectual left to mock and deride America. I, for one, am done with such people. If America is so bad, Mr. Rushdie, try moving back to Britain now, where people are in prison for tweets, where intellectuals grudged you even government-funded protection. Try India now, where 7 journalists are behind bars. And of course, I have a link to that article. Try living in any of the nations that supported the fatwa against you. No? I don't blame you. Maybe America is pretty good in spite of our, quote, original sins, end quote, after all. Maybe America is pretty good to you. Indeed, maybe America has, for all its flaws, been great, is great. You are here, after all, out of the whole world of places you could be. And maybe we are also in the process of making America great again. Quote, those red hats, end quote. We benighted lowbrow patriots. If you are going to come to America, Somali immigrants, Pakistani immigrants, Salvadorian immigrants, Indian and British and Mexican and German immigrants, come legally, learn the language, stop injuring girls and women, whoever you are, join the culture, the ethos, and be American. America is not an economy. It is not a location. America is a social contract. If you are going to benefit from it, and you are, I want to say you must give back to it in kind. Otherwise, please peacefully just leave. Seriously, honestly, that is how I feel. I feel that our empathy, our inclusiveness have inadvertently let millions into our homes who have zero respect for our family's values and no intentions whatsoever of actually joining our family. Brian and I sat quietly, getting ready internally for the tiring flight to Britain the next day. The 4th of July was coming up. We would be in the UK during our nation's birthday. The headlines were full of wars and the rumors of wars. The war is speeding up, said Brian comfortably. To him, a soldier, this is good. This is a good thing because you know where your enemy is and what your enemy's objectives are. Quote, when things move fast, plans fall apart and the enemy exposes himself, end quote, he explained. I was done with the war. As I have told you, I am not a warrior by nature. I had set out to be a poet, but our nation needs us. On her birthday, she needs a new birth of freedom. She needs our recommitment. I suppose that the war, a peaceful war, I trust, but still a fierce one, a battle of values, is speeding up and becoming clearer. I suppose that the war is not done with me. And I am going to share an image which I used to end this essay in honor of the 4th of July. So that is my essay, A Stopover in the Heartland. And a lot of you have joined me. Again, sorry for the messy hotel room, but I'm just keeping it real, as they say, and sharing with you my thoughts where I am. We don't have a studio here in Britain. We're just broadcasting out of our hotel room.